Well, hey folks, and welcome to Homesteader News SolarCabin channel. Today I'm going to talk about planting fruit trees, and I'm going to plant 3 apple trees here at my property. And the apple tree varieties that I've decided to plant are a dwarf apple tree, and I'll explain why I chose a dwarf tree. But the varieties that I've chose to plant, which you can see here, I got them in the back of my trailer. I went down and picked them up. This is a Sweet 16, and then I've got 2 Honeycrisp. And these are varieties that are recommended for this area because they can handle our drought and our real cold temperatures. These trees can handle temperatures down to minus 30 degrees. And here I'm in zone 5, but up here in this area we might get temperatures in the wintertime. A lot of times we might hit minus 20. I've never seen a minus 30 here, but we might hit minus 20. And so these trees can handle that. Now, something about these dwarf apple trees. They are specifically designed so that they do not take up as much room as a standard apple tree. In fact, it's hard to even get a full-size apple tree anymore. You'd have to really shop around to probably find a full-size apple tree. But I grew up with an orchard, and you can see our old orchard back there. That orchard was planted by my granddad over 100 years ago. Okay, and I share this orchard because this is on property that's right next to mine that is owned by my brother. That's part of my granddad's old homestead. Okay, and I share that orchard with him. Now you can see that some of those trees are 30 feet high, 30 feet across. They take up a lot of room. They use a lot of water. Okay, those were planted from seeds and grown up from seedlings, unlike these trees that I'm going to plant today. And they take a long time to grow, but they can grow very big. They can produce a lot of fruit. But they also require a lot more pruning. You can see there's a lot of dead wood in those fruit trees that he needs to get out of there. But a big orchard like that takes up a lot of room. So now what they've developed is these smaller trees that I'm going to be planting that are a dwarf tree. And these trees will generally get about 15, 16 feet high and about 15 feet wide. So they don't take up as much room. They still provide a good amount of shade. And how they do these trees is they actually they graft them. Now see if I can show you this. They graft the trees onto a different rootstock. This one here you can see the graft. You see this nub right here? Okay? That's a graft. And what they do is they usually graft them onto something like a crabapple tree or something like that, because the crabapple roots are a very good root system. And also the root system can handle very, very cold temperatures. And so that's how they can make these trees that wouldn't normally be able to grow in this area be able to grow, because they graft them on right here to a different root stock. And so all 3 of these trees are grafted onto a different root stock, probably a crabapple root stock. I don't know for sure what they've used, but it's probably a crabapple root stock. And that way these trees will handle much, much colder temperatures. And the tree itself won't get that big. Now you notice I got 2 different sizes here. That's because I got a good deal. These smaller trees here, they came in on his load and he said he wasn't expecting them to be that small. They should have been bigger, and so he gave them to me for half price. And so I only paid $15 a piece for these trees, where normally I'd have spent $30, $35 for these trees. This one here cost me about $35. So you want to make sure, if you're going to spend that kind of money, that your tree is going to grow and be fruitful, no pun intended. So I'm going to show you a way to get the most out of your fruit trees, to how to plant them correctly in the ground, and also how you can fertilize them with your natural human manure compost. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's get these trees in the ground. I'll show you first how we clear the ground, how I get it prepared to put these trees in the ground, and we'll get them in there. Okay, the first step in planting a fruit tree is location, location, location. You really need to think about where you're going to plant your fruit trees. Since they are a shade tree, they are going to get about 15 feet high, 15 feet wide. You want to make sure that they have enough room. Now fruit trees need a lot of sun. They have to have direct sun all the time, or they're not going to produce anything, and they'll probably die out. So first you want to make sure that you're selecting a place where you can get lots of sunshine, not shaded by other trees. Now I'm putting my trees right along this back fence, which you can see here. Okay, this is the fence between my brother's property and mine. And I'm going to put 3 apple trees, and then I'm going to put in an apricot tree and probably a peach tree in here. Now, preparing the soil. There's You can do this just by shovel and hand tools if you want, but you know, I'm kind of lazy that way, so I use my little tiller here. This is an electric tiller that I got, and I use that to break up all the roots and soil and also to create a depression. Okay, and it's just run off my generator. You can see it over there. I got it running off my generator. It took about 10 minutes just to dig down through these roots of the grass that's been long established. And then what I did is I created a depression. Now what that depression is for is that will actually create a space to hold the water around these apple trees. And for the first year, you want to water an apple tree about 3 times a week, and you want to really fill it up and let it soak good. Now apple trees like their roots well drained, so you need the soil to be well drained. Don't plant one where it's going to be constantly have water around its roots, or it won't do well. So what I did here is I created a depression. That way I can fill this depression up 3 times a week with some water from a hose, and that will keep the tree watered. Okay, and I dug down through the grass roots, so the grass roots won't come back up in that spot anytime real soon. And I just did that with a tiller, but you could do it with a shovel or whatever. And some tools that you might want to have. I use a clamshell digger. You can use a shovel for digging your hole, but I find a clamshell digger works a little bit better for just digging a round hole. And then you want a rake, of course. The rake I use to kind of rake that soil up out of that depression, kind of create a rim around the tree, and that way it will hold in the water. So when I pour water on this tree from my hose, it will hold that water right down there, right around the roots. Now you want to bury your tree. Get down here. You want to bury your tree down to that graft, okay? Not above the graft. Just below the graft right there. That's where you want to bury your tree to, okay? And the root stock, like I said, is probably a crabapple root stock. That will be down in the ground, and then the rest of the tree will be up above that. Don't bury it up above this, but you want it kind of down in a depression like I've got here, so that it'll hold the water, and you want that buried up to that graft. So now I'm going to dig the hole, and I'm going to bury that down to that graft. Okay, so now I've got my hole dug, and I just kind of eyeballed it. Wanted it to be at least as deep as the pot here. And you can see that my soil is a lot of sand. Now every soil is a little bit different. You might have a lot of clay in your soil. You might have a lot of rock in your soil. My soil, once I get down about 6 inches, is really nice loam sand, which actually has a lot of drainage. Sand is a good soil because underneath it will drain real well. So that way the apple trees won't have a lot of problem with drainage. But your soil, if it's real clay, if it holds a lot of water, you may have to do a little bit different. You may need to amend your soil a little bit. You may need to add some sand to it or whatever in order for it to have proper drainage around your fruit tree roots. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull this tree out very carefully, check to make sure that it's not root bound, and then I'm going to drop it down into that hole. If you pull your tree out of your pot and it has a lot of roots that are all wrapped around and around and around the base of the pot, then it's root bound. What you need to do is cut some of those roots loose, kind of pull the soil loose around so the roots will start spreading out instead of just staying in that circular pattern around that pot. These trees are only been planted about 6 months ago, so they're probably not going to be root bound, but that bigger one I have, it might be root bound, but this one here shouldn't have any problem. So we'll drop it down in that hole, and I might have to add a little bit of soil underneath it, but I want to make sure that it's right up to where that graft is, but I don't want that graft buried in the ground. So let's go ahead and put this tree in the ground now. Okay, so here you can see I've got the tree planted now down to that graft, and I've got a nice depression around it to hold the water in. That way when I water it 3 times a week for the first year, that depression right there will just fill up full of water, and that way it'll soak that water right down real slowly to the roots, and that's what these apple trees like. Now if you're planting in an area where you get lots of high wind, you probably want to stake your apple trees. This apple tree and the ones along this fence are going to be protected from the wind because I've got a nice big cedar fence right here. So I don't have to worry about staking this one. However, if it starts leaning one way or the other, I'll probably stake it anyway just to hold it up straight. But I shouldn't really need to, and that will take care of that. Now, That's planting a fruit tree. But I'm going to show you also how to use your humanure from your composting toilet, like I use, to feed these trees so they grow faster than they would naturally. So I'm going to go ahead and put that system in now. Okay folks, we've got that fruit tree planted now, and now I'm going to show you how I'm going to feed that tree with some natural humanure fertilizer. And as I've told you in other videos, I use a solar composting toilet, which you can see part of the system out there. That's my solar composter. The other part of the system is a porta potty in my house, and once a week I empty that usually into the composter. But I don't want to waste that fertilizer. Humanure is excellent fertilizer, very high in nitrogen, excellent for growing plants, can be used just like any animal fertilizer. However, I do recommend that you use humanure fertilizer only on shrubs, fruit trees, and flower gardens. The reason is humanure can carry some pathogens that can get into a garden. Usually it would affect tubers, things like potatoes and things like that. If that gets onto those vegetables, it could cause some problems and make somebody unhealthy. So I only recommend humanure around fruit trees, around shrubs, and your flower gardens, things like that. And what we're going to do is I'm going to use a piece of this perf pipe, and they call this perf or perforated pipe. And what it is this is a 10-foot length, and it has these holes in it. As you can see, every 6 inches it's got these holes, and those holes go all the way around this pipe. And that allows the fluids to flow out through those holes. And these pipes are used for creating septic drain fields. And so you can get them, I think this 10-foot piece cost me $10, okay? And it will be cut into 2-foot lengths, which I've already got it marked off here for a 2-foot length. So I will get 5 of these 2-foot lengths, and I just use my skill saw there and a tape measure and just cut them off. Don't worry if they're not completely square. That doesn't matter because they're going to go in the ground. As long as they're about 2 foot in length, that's all you need here. So I'll go ahead and cut this down to 2 foot in length, and I'm going to put in 5 trees, so that'll give me 5 lengths, just perfect for the amount of trees that I'm going to put in this week. And we'll go ahead and put this in the ground, then I'll explain how the system works. Okay, so now you can see what I've done is I've got this 2-foot piece of perf pipe. Okay, and I've just used the clamshell digger there and dug down a hole, and you want to leave about 4 inches or so sticking up above the top of the soil because you're going to want to put something over this to keep the flies from buzzing around it, keep insects from getting in it, and keep it from getting filled up with dirt. And what I use is just a plastic bag with a rubber band around it. But you can see just a hole, and then this is right next to the tree, just outside of the drip line. Now the drip line on the tree is where the leaves go. You can see the leaves are right here. This is called the drip line because that's where the roots are going to be extended to. You can tell how far and deep your roots are by where your leaves are, okay? The outside of the very edge of the roots is what actually feeds through the soil. The root trunk down there, after a while, that won't really actually do any collecting of food and nutrients for the plant. The roots that have extended out underneath the soil, and the farther they go out into the soil, those feeder roots are going to be out here around this drip edge. So I've got my feeder system, which I'm going to put my humanure in, right out just outside of that drip line of the tree, just outside the outside leaves of the tree. That way it's going to encourage that tree to put out feeder roots. And that's what I want, is I want a large root system that will get the fruit tree growing faster and start producing faster. Now, I'm going to backfill with this soil around this pipe here, and then once a week I come out with my composter toilet, my porta potty, and I fill that pipe up just halfway, which is about a gallon of liquid, okay? And since I'm going to have 5 of these trees, all with this system here, that'll take about 5 gallons. Well, that just happens to be how much my tank holds for my porta potty. So once a week, during good weather, when I'm feeding my trees, I can come out and just dump my porta potty into this system, 1 gallon in each of these for each tree, and then a gallon or 2 gallons of water. I really like to flush the system out, and that way of fresh water. So you want about a third of the amount that you put in there to be humanure and 2/3 to be water, okay? And I do that once a week. That way it's not going to put too much nitrogen into the soil, just enough to feed this tree, get it growing really a lot faster, blooming up, making it really green. And human fertilizer has been used for centuries and centuries and is still used in a lot of different countries as a great fertilizer. As long as it's done appropriately and correctly, you're not going to risk contaminating your soil or spreading pathogens around or getting E. coli or anything like that. Just make sure that you're not using too much of it. Make sure you wash your hands really good after using any human manure. And I only use human manure that I know comes from me or comes from people that I know don't have diseases that might cause problems, okay? So I don't let other people use my toilet, so I know what's going into my system. If you're using a standard toilet with a lot of people using it, I don't recommend using human manure. But if you know where your human manure is, and if you're healthy, then your human waste is also going to be healthy and not cause a problem. So this is now going to feed my tree. And I'm going to have 5 of these trees all along this fence line here. 2 more apple trees and an apricot tree and probably a peach tree, each with a system like this. And once a week I'll come out, pour my human manure, 1 gallon of human manure in there, 2 gallons of water on top of it, and then also fill up this basin that I created around the tree. And that will fertilize and feed my trees, get rid of my human waste so I don't waste that human waste. It's a great fertilizer, and that's the system that I use here. All right. Okay, so there's the pipe just planted into the ground, and what you want to do is this pipe should be right out at that drip line like I said. Now this pipe will be okay for about a year, and then as this tree grows, that drip line of course is going to get out here farther. So then all I do is I just pull that pipe up, fill the hole back in with some soil, and put it out here a little bit farther for the next year. And every year I move it, usually just once a year. In the spring I move that out until it's out at the full extent of the drip line. So I always want to keep this pipe right here always at the outside edge of the leaves. That way the feeder roots are going to get the fertilizer, and that's what we're after. Okay? All right, folks. That is my fruit tree planting lesson and feeding lesson for the day. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, SolarCabin. Go visit my website, simplesolarhomesteading.com for lots more information. Thanks and have a great day, folks.